Every single zombie movie, show, and game has one thing in common. There's always someone who gets bitten and says absolutely nothing about it. From The Walking Dead to 28 Days Later, this one decision has killed more survivors than the zombies themselves. So today, we're breaking down every fatal decision that survivors make in zombie apocalypses, and why your brain is literally hardwired to make every single one of them. Starting with the one that makes you scream at your TV. Hiding a bite. You've seen it 100 times. Someone gets bitten, they pull their sleeve down, and they rejoin the group like nothing happened. And every single time, you're sitting there thinking, just tell them. But here's the thing. You'd probably do the exact same thing. About 75% of people have either hidden or seriously considered hiding an infectious illness from the people around them. Not because they're stupid, but because their brain immediately starts running social math. If I tell them, they'll kick me out. If I tell them, they'll kill me. If I say nothing, maybe I get lucky. People hide illness to keep their status, their role, their identity within a group. And in a zombie apocalypse, revealing a bite doesn't just mean social exclusion. It means a bullet. Here's where it gets worse. Infection timelines typically range from 12 to 48 hours depending on where you got bitten. That's a long window. Long enough for your brain to build an entire cathedral of denial inside it. I feel fine right now, so maybe I'm immune. Maybe if I just wait a little longer, I'll know for sure. You won't. You're turning, but your brain doesn't care. Most people in extreme survival situations don't rise to the occasion. They freeze. Panic takes over. Rational thinking collapses, and the majority end up mentally locked up rather than taking decisive action, which is, not ideal. The infected person isn't being selfish on purpose. Their brain is literally protecting them from the reality that they're already dead. Telling the group feels like signing their own execution order. Staying quiet feels like survival. The wildest part is the disconnect. Healthy people are extremely confident they'd reveal a bite immediately. Brave, noble, self-sacrificing, but actively infected individuals report high concealment rates regardless of symptom severity. You think you'd be the hero. You wouldn't. Yeah, you'd pull your sleeve down and hope for the best, just like every Walking Dead character fans have screamed at for over a decade. But at least, a hidden bite only endangers one group. Wait until you hear what happens when that group decides to split up. Splitting the group. Every horror movie in history has that one moment where someone says, "We'll cover more ground if we split up," and every audience member collectively loses their mind. But here's the thing. It's not just a dumb movie cliche. It's genuinely one of the worst decisions you can make in a survival scenario. Smaller groups are objectively worse at almost everything. They find fewer resources, they secure less territory, and they lose the ability to rotate tasks like keeping watch, carrying supplies, and scouting ahead. You think you're being efficient, but what you're actually doing is creating two weaker teams that can't do what one full team could. You cover more ground and accomplish less. Congratulations, but the resource problem isn't even the worst part. Functional survivor groups depend on overlapping strengths working together. Someone leads, someone navigates, someone keeps morale from collapsing, someone notices the thing nobody else noticed. The second you split the group, you fracture that web. Half your skill sets are now somewhere else. Your leadership structure just got cut in two. The trust you built through shared experience is now operating on a delay because you can't actually see what the other team is doing. It's like ripping the engine out of a car and expecting both halves to still drive. And here's where it gets worse. Under stress, people don't make optimal decisions. They make familiar ones. Your brain defaults to patterns it already knows, even when those patterns are terrible. A full group has cognitive diversity, multiple perspectives catching blind spots and questioning bad calls. A split group has maybe 3 people all defaulting to the same panicked instincts with nobody around to say, "Hey, maybe let's not walk into that building that's making growling noises." The interpersonal dynamics get ugly too. Tight-knit groups with shared history tend to distribute blame collectively when things go wrong. We messed up instead of you messed up. Groups of strangers do the opposite. They single out individuals. So when your freshly split team loses half their supplies or gets someone killed, the immediate response isn't problem solving, it's blame. And blame in a survival situation is basically a countdown timer to the group tearing itself apart from the inside. Reduced capability, fractured leadership, worse decision-making, and a blame dynamic that turns every failure into a civil war. All because someone wanted to cover more ground. But if splitting up sounds bad in the open, wait until you hear what happens when survivors walk into a building without knowing how to get back out. Looting without a clear exit. Every single person watching this video would go to the grocery store first. I know it, you know it, and every zombie within a mile radius knows it too. That's the problem. First wave scavengers hitting supermarkets face roughly 50 times more zombie encounters per supply item recovered compared to outlying locations. 50 times. Hardware stores, farm supply outlets, veterinary clinics, these places get looted at only 30 to 40% the rate of grocery stores, meaning they're sitting there packed with useful supplies while every survivor and their dog is fighting over the last canned peaches at Walmart. And it makes perfect sense why. Supermarkets are the places you knew as a civilian. You know the layout, you know where the canned goods are, you know where the bottled water sits, sits, that familiarity feels like an advantage. It's not. It's a trap, because every other survivor is running the exact same mental playbook, which means the one place you think is safest is actually the most contested, most picked over, most zombie-dense building in your entire zip code. But let's say you get inside and it's relatively clear. Great, now you need to get out. Studies on evacuation in complex indoor environments show that bottleneck effects concentrate at stairways, exits, and checkout counters, creating zones of severe congestion where your ability to escape drops off a cliff. You're funneling yourself through the same choke points as every panicked survivor and every shambling corpse in the building. One blocked exit and you're shopping for your own coffin. But I brought a gun, you say. I'll be quiet about it. I've got a suppressor. Here's where it gets really fun. A suppressed point 22LR, which is theoretically the quietest suppressed firearm combination you can put together, still produces 113 to 120 decibels. That's not quiet. That's a jackhammer. Within 100 meters, zombies will aggressively pursue that sound, and the audible range extends out to 800 meters, attracting every wandering undead in the area. So you fire one round to clear a zombie blocking aisle 6, and you've just rung a dinner bell for every corpse in a 16-block radius. Cool. That's also a thing that happened. You thought you were being tactical. Suppressed weapon, quick, in and out, grab what you need. Meanwhile, you've created a cascading threat envelope that's pulling potentially hundreds of zombies toward your position like a funnel cloud made of teeth. And you're standing in a building with 3 exits, 2 of which are probably already blocked. The veterinary clinic 2 miles away has antibiotics, surgical tools, and 0 competition. But sure, let's fight over granola bars in the death box. I don't know what to tell you, but if you think bad location choices are dangerous, wait until you hear why the slow zombies shambling toward that supermarket are far deadlier than you think. Underestimating a slow horde. Here's a question that every zombie fan thinks they already know the answer to. What's more dangerous, a fast zombie or a slow one? Fast, obviously, right? A sprinter will chase you down, close the gap, and tear you apart before you can react. Turns out, no. When you actually think through how zombie outbreaks would propagate, the results are so counterintuitive they almost feel like a prank. The deadliest zombie isn't the one doing a full sprint at you. It's the one moving at a moderate, relentless pace. Not fast enough to trigger your full fight-or-flight panic. Not slow enough for you to casually walk away and forget about it. Just persistent enough to keep showing up. Let me explain. Because I know that sounds insane. A fast zombie sprints at you. You panic, you either die immediately or escape cleanly. Binary outcome. The encounter is over in seconds either way. But a moderately slow zombie, that thing creates prolonged engagements, extended contact windows, more bites per encounter, more transmission events per hour. You think you can handle it, so you don't run. You engage, you get swarmed, and suddenly 3 of them are on you instead of 1. The infection doesn't need speed. It needs consistency, and it needs you to stick around long enough to get overwhelmed. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Truly slow zombies, the classic shambling walkers, prove devastating not through individual lethality, but through sheer grinding attrition. They don't tire, they don't sleep, they don't stop. A horde that moves at walking pace will eventually cover every inch of ground you're standing on, and all it takes is one mistake, one blocked exit, one night where your guard is down. The slow ones compensate with volume and persistence rather than individual threat, which is, not ideal, but wait, it gets worse. When humans fight back, even effectively, they naturally target the slowest, easiest zombies first. The shamblers out front, the ones dragging a leg, the ones stuck behind a fence. That means the moderately fast ones survive longer, infect more people, and produce more zombies. You're functionally applying selective pressure. Every time a survivor picks off the easy kills, the remaining horde skews faster and more dangerous. You're literally breeding a more optimized predator by doing the smart thing. So every survivor who's ever looked at a shambling horde and thought we can handle this, every character who cracked a joke about how slow the walkers are, every group that got comfortable because the dead weren't running, they were staring at the perfect attrition engine and laughing at it. The slow horde doesn't need to be fast. It just needs you to underestimate it, and you will, every single time. But if misreading the speed of the dead is bad, wait until you see what happens when survivors stop sleeping. Ignoring mental fatigue. Here's the one that nobody in any zombie movie, show, or game ever acknowledges until someone's already dead because of it. Mental fatigue, not tiredness, not I need a nap, a literal brain degradation. When a person enters survival mode through prolonged stress or trauma, the higher functioning regions of the brain start shutting down, just powering off, like someone flipping breakers in a house. What's left is base survival function, the lizard brain. And the lizard brain is great at one thing, keeping you breathing right now. It is catastrophically bad at everything else. Focus drops, memory fragments, emotional regulation collapses entirely, multitasking, which is basically the only thing keeping you alive in a zombie apocalypse, apocalypse becomes nearly impossible. Your brain is running on emergency power, and emergency power doesn't support complex decision-making. And this isn't speculation. Research on critical care professionals, people who work in life-or-death environments every single day, it found that those experiencing decision regret reported substantially more fatigue, more daytime sleepiness, less recovery between shifts, and worse sleep quality than their well-rested counterparts. These are trained professionals in controlled hospital environments making worse decisions because they're tired. Now imagine that same person hasn't slept properly in 3 weeks, hasn't eaten a full meal in 5 days, and watched their best friend get torn apart on Tuesday, which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets really dangerous. Studies on evacuation behavior under stress found that elevated stress levels cause people to default to familiar routes, even when those routes are objectively worse, even when they're longer, even when they're more dangerous. The stressed brain says, I know that road, and locks in, completely ignoring the safer alternative 2 blocks over. So your exhausted survivor isn't choosing the dangerous path because they're stupid. They're choosing it because their brain has physically lost the ability to evaluate alternatives. It's not a character flaw, it's cognitive collapse. And then you layer PTSD on top of all of this. Safety behaviors like avoiding certain places or people feel protective, but they actually reinforce trauma memories instead of resolving them. The avoidance becomes the cage. So now you've got survivors who are either completely paralyzed by risk assessment, unable to commit to any action because everything feels equally lethal, or they swing the other direction and recklessly charge into danger without a second thought. No middle ground, no measured response, just freeze or sprint, and both get you killed. This is the invisible killer. Every time you watch a character in The Walking Dead make a decision that seems obviously terrible, remember that their brain has been running on fumes for months. They're not dumb, they're compromised, and nobody in the group is checking for it because everyone else is just as far gone. But if cognitive decline is a silent killer, the next one is loud, unreliable, and somehow still everyone's first choice for zombie defense, relying on high-maintenance firearms. Every single person who's ever had a zombie apocalypse conversation has spent way too long debating calibers. 9mm versus .45A CP, AR-15 versus AK-47, magazine capacity, muzzle velocity, stopping power. And all of it, every single word of that debate, is completely irrelevant, because the thing that kills you in a zombie apocalypse isn't the wrong caliber. It's the gun that doesn't fire when you pull the trigger. Here's the thing nobody in these conversations wants to talk about. Dust. Not zombies. Not ammo shortages. Dust. Minor grit. Getting into firing mechanisms locks up otherwise smooth actions, causes failures to cycle, and creates frequent jams. Now combine that dust with the carbon residue that builds up every time you fire a round, and you get exponentially worse degradation. In a sandy or debris-heavy environment, which is basically every post-apocalyptic environment, your fancy semi-automatic rifle becomes an expensive club within weeks of missed maintenance. And good luck finding gun cleaning kits when the supply chain is a distant memory. But the gear problem goes way deeper than dirty guns. Let's talk about fuel. Regular gasoline from the day everything collapsed? Functionally useless within 3 to 6 months without stabilizers. Even with stabilizers, you're buying yourself maybe a year, tops. Diesel holds up slightly better, potentially stretching to around 12 months under ideal conditions. But after that, it's done. Your vehicles don't move, your generators don't run. Your entire logistics chain, the thing that lets you transport supplies, relocate camps, and outrun hordes, just evaporates. Nobody in zombie fiction ever addresses this. Characters are still driving pickup trucks 5 years into the apocalypse like gasoline ages the same way wine does. And then there's my personal favorite piece of tactical irony. Survivors love strapping on ballistic plates, military-grade ceramic inserts designed to stop rifle rounds traveling at 2,800 feet per second. Genuinely impressive technology. But here's where it gets funny. A zombie doesn't shoot you. A zombie grabs your exposed forearm and bites it. You've got plates rated to stop a 7.62 NATO round sitting on your chest, while your wrists and neck are completely bare. It's like wearing a bulletproof helmet to a sword fight. Cool, but not helpful. So what actually works? The unsexy answer, a 12-gauge pump shotgun. Manual operation means zero feed mechanism failures. No gas system to clog, no semi-auto cycling to jam. You rack it, you fire it, you rack it again. At close range, which is the only range that matters when a corpse is lunging at your throat, one adequately placed shot ends the encounter. You don't need 30 rounds in a magazine. You need one round that actually fires. But if unreliable gear can get you killed, wait until you hear what happens when you let the wrong person into your group. 7. Trusting untested strangers. This one ties directly back to mental fatigue, and the combination is devastating. Here's the thing about trust. It's not a feeling. It's a neurological process. Your brain has to run through mentalizing, reward processing, affective evaluation, and cognitive control just to decide whether some random person is worth sharing a can of beans with. That's 4 separate systems working together, and every single one of them requires time and repeated interactions to calibrate properly. You can't shortcut it. Your brain literally needs data points, multiple encounters where someone's behavior either matches or contradicts their words before it can generate a reliable trust assessment. Now guess what? An apocalypse doesn't give you time, repeated interactions, stable conditions for observation, survival scenarios, pressure groups into accepting strangers immediately, because the math seems simple. More people equals more hands, more skills, more protection. Hey, this guy says he was a mechanic. Great, we need a mechanic. Welcome aboard, Dimitri. Nobody stops to ask whether Dimitri is actually a mechanic, whether he's psychologically stable or whether he's been bitten somewhere you can't see. But here's where it gets really interesting. In normal civilization, people with weaker family ties actually tend to be more trusting of strangers. That's a genuine advantage in a high-trust society. You're open, adaptable. You form new connections easily. But that advantage completely reverses in low-trust environments. And an apocalypse is the lowest trust environment imaginable. The social rules that made you a great networker at office parties now make you the person who invites a wolf into the shelter because he seemed nice. The rules of trust that worked in civilization actively mislead you in apocalypse. That's not a minor recalibration. That's a total system inversion. And remember what we covered about fatigue? Exhausted, traumatized survivors can't accurately assess stranger trustworthiness because their threat detection systems go haywire. They flag everything as dangerous, or worse, nothing at all, which creates a brutal paradox. The moments when your group most desperately needs to be selective about who they let in are exactly the moments when your ability to screen people is completely degraded. You need better judgment precisely when your judgment is at its worst. Successful survivor groups need trust, mutual respect, specialization, established objectives, adaptation, patience, delegation, and leadership. That's not a wish list. That's a minimum operating requirement. And groups containing untested strangers almost always fail on the trust dimension first. Once trust breaks, it cascades through everything else. Delegation falls apart because nobody believes the new person will follow through. Leadership fractures because the stranger doesn't respect authority they didn't choose. One compromised element and the whole structure unravels. This is essentially the group-level equivalent of hiding a bite. It feels compassionate. It feels like the right thing to do. But you're introducing existential risk into your community based on a gut feeling generated by a brain running on 3 hours of sleep and 6 weeks of unprocessed trauma, which is, not ideal. But if you think bad group composition is dangerous, wait until you hear why the place you're standing might be the single worst decision you've ever made. Staying in urban centers. Every mistake we've covered so far kills individuals. This one kills civilizations. Population density is one of the single strongest predictors of how fast a disease spreads. That's not a theory. It's observable history. Every major pandemic in recorded time has hit cities hardest and fastest. Within the first week of any urban outbreak, cases overwhelmingly concentrate in the highest density areas. The virus doesn't spread evenly across a map like spilled water. It detonates in the places where people are packed tightest, and then it radiates outward. Cities aren't just vulnerable to zombie outbreaks, they're amplifiers. And the reason goes beyond just having more people crammed together. Cities are engineered for daily efficiency, not emergency evacuation. Every single design choice that makes a city functional in peacetime becomes a death sentence when the dead start walking. Skyscrapers become vertical prisons. You're on the 30th floor, the elevator's dead, and the stairwell has 400 people trying to push through a single door. Tunnel systems that moved millions of commuters per day now move infection underground, spreading it across entire districts before anyone on the surface even knows what's happening. Highways gridlock within hours. Subways stop running. Exit velocity. The rate at which people can actually leave the city drops below anything sustainable. You're not escaping. You're waiting in line to die. Let's talk specifics. New York City is the single most catastrophically vulnerable metropolitan center on the planet for a zombie outbreak, and it's not particularly close. The density accelerates bite chains to an almost mathematical certainty. Vertical living traps millions of people above ground level with zero way down. The island geography of Manhattan creates evacuation bottlenecks so severe that, even without zombies, getting 1.6 million people off that island would take days. The subway system, all 472 stations of it, becomes an underground highway for infection, spreading the outbreak across boroughs before quarantine is even a conversation. Sanitation fails. Hospitals overload. Water infrastructure contaminates. Everything stacks at once, and the city folds like wet cardboard. But here's the detail that really gets me. Gated communities within urban centers, the places people think are safe, are actually some of the most dangerous locations you can be. The gate creates a false security perception so powerful that residents fundamentally change their behavior. They leave doors unlocked. They disable alarm systems. They wave unauthorized people through the checkpoint because, hey, the gate is supposed to handle security for them. The entire defensive posture of the community gets outsourced to a metal bar across a driveway. One compromised entry point and every single household inside is exposed simultaneously, because nobody behind that gate was actually prepared for a real threat. The biggest survival decision in a zombie apocalypse isn't what weapon you carry. It isn't who you trust. It isn't whether you sleep in shifts or ration your food. It's where you are when the outbreak begins. Rural areas offer space to breathe, land to grow food, natural barriers, and the single most valuable resource in an apocalypse: distance from other people. Cities offer proximity and scarcity. That's it. Every fatal decision we've covered today: hiding bites, splitting up, looting without exits, underestimating slow hordes, ignoring exhaustion, trusting broken equipment, letting strangers in without vetting, they all share one thing in common. They feel like the right call in the moment, they feel logical, they feel human, and that's exactly why they kill you. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every zombie movie ranked by how long you'd actually survive, click the video on the screen now.